The knock came from behind the closet wall, soft, deliberate, like fingertips testing the air for permission. Ethan stood frozen, half-dressed in the dim light of his bedroom, the silence of the house stretching thin around him. He told himself it was the pipes, the wind, anything but what it sounded like, a person waiting to be answered. The knocking came again, 3 slow taps, each one echoing through the hollow space. For 6 months, the room had felt too big since Lydia vanished, her scent fading from the sheets, her laughter from the walls. But tonight, something filled that void, something that moved behind the plaster. Ethan leaned in, heart hammering, his reflection trembling faintly in the mirror. Then came a whisper, breathy and too close. Ethan don't open the door. But it wasn't Lydia's voice. It was his own. When Ethan pulled the closet door open, the hinges groaned like a wounded thing. The stale air spilled out, thick with dust and cold. Inside, there were only coats, boxes, and the faint scent of mothballs, nothing alive. But as he pushed the coats aside, his hand brushed something solid behind the fabric. A flat, wooden panel where there should have been drywall. The grain was wrong, smoother, newer. He pressed harder. The panel shifted slightly, revealing a seam. Behind it, darkness breathed. He could feel cool air pulling gently through the crack, like the inhale of a sleeping mouth. He stepped back, heart hammering. The whisper came again, closer this time, and it wasn't through the wall anymore. It was right behind him. "You're standing in the wrong room," it said. Ethan fetched a screwdriver from the nightstand, the metal handle slick in his sweaty grip. The panel was held by small nails, too deliberate to be part of the original house. Each one creaked as he pried it loose, releasing tiny clouds of dust. The smell that drifted out wasn't decay. It was cleaner, colder, like air sealed for decades. When the last nail fell, the panel swung inward on its own, revealing a narrow crawl space no wider than his shoulders. He raised his flashlight, the beam cutting into the dark. At first, he saw only emptiness. Then, the light hit wallpaper. His wallpaper. The same pattern, same color. His pulse quickened. He leaned forward and saw a room on the other side, identical in every detail to his own, except the bed was unmade, and someone was lying in it. He crawled through before his mind could stop him. The air was colder here, heavy with stillness. Every sound from his real room faded as if sealed away behind glass. He stood up, heart pounding, and turned in slow disbelief. Everything was the same. His book stacked at the same angle, the same framed photograph of Lydia on the dresser, the same faint burn mark on the rug near the bed. But everything felt wrong. Slightly delayed, as though this room was remembering how to exist. The light flickered once, briefly showing movement under the bed. Ethan called out, his voice thin. No answer. He stepped closer to the bed, reaching for the blanket. His hand stopped when he noticed something on the nightstand. A glass of water half full, still rippling. Ethan crouched beside the bed. The shape beneath the blanket didn't move, though the rise of the sheets looked almost human. He reached out, fingers shaking, and pulled the cover back in one motion. The bed was empty. No one. The pillow was warm, the indentation fresh. He stumbled backward, staring at the spot where someone had just been lying seconds ago. The mirror across the room caught his movement, but in the reflection, the bed wasn't empty. There, beneath the blanket, something shifted, breathing softly. He turned to look. Nothing. But the reflection kept breathing. The mirrored version of him leaned closer to the glass, eyes wide, lips curling into a slow, knowing smile. Ethan barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that grin in the mirror, the other him smiling where he hadn't. When dawn finally broke, he forced himself to believe it was all imagination, exhaustion playing tricks on him. But when he returned to the closet, the hidden panel was still open. The room beyond still existed, unchanged. He stepped inside again, morning light pouring faintly through the same window twice. This time, the air felt warmer, like someone had just left. On the nightstand in the duplicate room sat his watch, the one he'd lost months ago. Its ticking echoed faintly, out of sync with time. Then he heard footsteps behind him, slow, heavy, and realized they weren't his. The footsteps stopped behind him. Ethan turned slowly, heart hammering in his throat. Nothing. The crawl space was empty. But when he looked back into the duplicate room, something had changed. The bed was now neatly made. The photograph of Lydia was gone. His pulse quickened. He stepped closer to the dresser and froze. There was a note written in Lydia's handwriting, her looping script unmistakable. "He's not you!" His stomach clenched. A faint whisper stirred from the mirror's edge, repeating the words in her voice. He reached for the glass, his fingers trembling, and his reflection didn't move. It just stared back, lips parting in slow, deliberate defiance. Ethan stumbled backward, tripping over the bed frame. The mirror flickered. For a split second, he wasn't in the reflection at all. Someone else was. The other Ethan stood perfectly still, eyes sunken, face slack, wearing the same clothes but drenched as if he'd crawled from a river. The real Ethan reached out instinctively, his hand brushing the glass, and felt warmth. The mirror's surface pulsed beneath his fingers like a living thing. The other Ethan blinked, slow and deliberate. A droplet of water slid down inside the mirror, leaving a streak across the reflection. Then it smiled faintly and whispered without moving its lips, "I remember her better than you do." He ran, crawled through the narrow passage, tearing his arm on a nail. The moment he was back in his real room, the temperature shifted. Warmer, safer. He slammed the panel shut and leaned against it, gasping, but the sound followed him. Faint knocking from the other side, patient, rhythmic, as though counting his breaths. He backed away, clutching his bleeding arm. The clock on his wall clicked twice, then stopped completely. His eyes drifted toward the mirror across the room. In its glass, the door to the hidden room was still open. And standing there, framed by the darkness, was himself, smiling, holding out the watch he'd left behind. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed for hours, afraid to move. The knocking had stopped. Only silence remained, deep, hollow, waiting. His eyes stayed fixed on the mirror. Sometimes the reflection was empty. Sometimes it wasn't. He told himself not to look, but curiosity was stronger than fear. When he finally rose and approached, his reflection didn't follow. It just stood there, waiting, eyes darker now, almost bruised. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and went out. The only glow came from inside the mirror, soft, golden, like morning. But Ethan's room was swallowed in night. From the glass, his reflection whispered with a calm, familiar voice, "You don't belong in this version anymore." The voice came that night, soft, broken, and trembling through the vents like a forgotten melody. Ethan sat upright in bed, heart pounding, every nerve alive. It wasn't the whisper of his reflection this time. It was Lydia. Her voice carried the same rhythm, the same small sighs she made when she used to talk in her sleep. "Ethan," she murmured, "it's cold here." He stared at the closet door, shut tight, but the sound came from behind it, closer, clearer. His throat tightened. "Lydia?" he whispered. No answer, only a low hum, like breathing filtered through walls. Then came the second voice, his own, answering her gently. "I know. I'm with you." His skin turned to ice. That wasn't him speaking. By morning the voice had changed. Lydia wasn't calling to him anymore. She was calling through him. When Ethan spoke, his words came a half-second late, echoing softly like they'd been said once before. The house seemed to breathe with him, the floorboards creaking to his rhythm. He stood in front of the mirror, staring at the version of himself that now mouthed words on its own. "She's with me," the reflection whispered soundlessly. Ethan's lips trembled. "Where?" he breathed. The answer came from behind the glass, not spoken, but heard. A rush of air, a woman's sob, and the faint clatter of nails scraping wood. The sound came from inside the closet wall. Ethan pressed his ear to the closet wall again. The tapping stopped. Then, very faintly, a whisper threaded through. Lydia's voice, weaker now, soaked with static. "They made me stay," she breathed. "He said you'd come back." Ethan's chest constricted. "Whew," he whispered back. Silence. Then another voice layered over hers, calm and familiar, echoing his own. "You told me to keep her safe." He froze, fingers tightening against the plaster. "You're not me," he hissed. The wall trembled softly. "No," the other voice said. "You're not you anymore." A chill crept up his spine as a shadow stretched across the floor, cast from a light that didn't exist in the room. Night fell heavy. Ethan left the light on, but it didn't help. The glow seemed weaker in this house now, drained. He sat by the closet door, listening. Hours passed. No voices, no knocks, only the occasional groan of wood under weight. When he finally stood to leave, the mirror caught his motion and didn't mimic it. His reflection just stood there, unmoving, eyes sunken and dark. Then it lifted a finger and pointed, not at Ethan, but at the closet. He turned slowly. The door was open. The panel inside was gone. Beyond it, the hidden room waited again, washed in a dull red glow. From within came a whisper that sounded like Lydia's breath against his ear. "Come see what you left behind." He crawled through the opening again, drawn by a force he didn't understand. The red light hummed softly, coating the walls in a sickly hue. The air was colder here, almost wet. He stood up slowly, looking around. The duplicate bedroom was gone. In its place stood a version of his own, stripped bare of furniture, the walls breathing faintly like living flesh. From the far side, Lydia's voice whispered again, fragile, trembling. "He said you'd find me." Ethan stepped forward, calling her name. A figure moved in the dark, familiar, upright, still. It was himself, but his eyes were black, and his voice was calm when he spoke. "You did find her, Ethan," he said, stepping closer. "You just shouldn't have left her in here." The next morning, Ethan woke up on the wrong side of the bed, literally. The window was on the opposite wall. The light poured from the wrong angle, and the air smelled faintly of iron. He sat up slowly, confusion turning to horror, as he realized the photograph on the dresser was missing again, replaced by another, nearly identical, except Lydia's eyes were closed. He stumbled to the closet, but it was gone. Smooth wall. No seam, no door. Panic clawed at his throat as he ran his hands along the plaster. Then, from the mirror, a voice broke the silence. "You shouldn't have left," it said softly. Ethan turned. His reflection was smiling, his own voice coming from behind the glass. "Now it's my turn to be real." Ethan stumbled to the mirror, heart hammering, pressing his palms flat against the glass. His reflection mimicked him now, but its grin remained. "What are you?" he whispered. The other Ethan tilted his head, the same voice emerging from both mouths in perfect unison. "You." A faint vibration rippled through the floor as the reflection's hand pressed outward, pushing from the other side of the glass. The surface flexed, distorting like water. Ethan tried to step back, but his shoes stuck to the floor as if the air had turned to glue. The reflection leaned forward until its forehead touched the inside of the mirror. "You left her with me," it said softly. "And now you'll take my place." The mirror cracked. A single line split down the middle, sharp and glistening. Ethan fell backward, the reflection still standing. From behind the fracture came light, blinding, golden, pulsing with rhythm. Blinding, golden, pulsing with rhythm. Lydia's voice whispered through it. Don't let him out. Ethan crawled away, shielding his eyes. The reflection reached forward, its arms slipping cleanly through the glass like silk. Flesh met air. The sound was wrong. Wet. Elastic, human. Ethan scrambled to his feet as his reflection climbed out of the mirror, barefoot, dripping condensation, smiling as if stepping into sunlight. "You've been looking tired," it said softly. "Let me take care of things for a while." The next moment blurred. The reflection moved like smoke, every step silent. Ethan lunged for the door, but it wouldn't open. The knob melted beneath his touch, metal soft and pliant. "Don't fight it," the reflection murmured. Its voice filled the room from everywhere. "You wanted her back." Ethan spun, panting, as Lydia's figure appeared in the corner, faint but real this time. She looked the same as before, auburn hair loose, brown eyes wide, but her skin shimmered like film projected on glass. "Ethan," she whispered. "He's not finished with me yet." The reflection turned toward her, smiling tenderly. "Neither of us are." The walls around them began to ripple, the room folding inward on itself. The floor split open. The two versions of Ethan faced each other, their voices merging into one tone that no longer belonged to either. Lydia screamed, her voice echoing into the void beneath them. The reflection stepped forward, pressing its palm against Ethan's chest. He felt warmth, then nothing, as though his heartbeat had been handed over. "Rest," the reflection whispered, almost gently. The last thing Ethan saw before darkness swallowed him was his own face smiling back from where he once stood. The reflection turned toward Lydia, extended a trembling hand, and whispered, "He's gone now. It's just us again." The room sealed shut. The mirror on the wall smoothed over, perfect and still. Ethan woke to the sound of birds outside his window. Sunlight spilled across his sheets, warm and golden, almost comforting. For a moment, he thought it was all over, but when he sat up, the air didn't move with him. His breath didn't fog the mirror anymore. He turned toward the glass on the wall, and there he was, sitting on the same bed in the same room, breathing, blinking. The reflection stretched, ran a hand through its hair, and smiled at the morning. Ethan tried to call out, but no sound came. The world beyond the mirror looked bright and alive, full of warmth. His world was colorless, soundless, like a painting left in the dark. The reflection rose, looked directly at him, and whispered through unmoving lips, "It feels good to be real." Days passed. Or at least, they felt like days. Time didn't behave here. Ethan watched his reflection go about life as if nothing had changed. It made coffee, answered calls, even smiled at neighbors through the window. Lydia's photo returned to the nightstand, upright again, but her eyes seemed different now, aware. Ethan screamed, punched the glass until his knuckles split, but it made no sound. The reflection turned slowly toward the mirror, staring right at him, its lips curling into a soft, knowing grin. Then it held up the photograph, looking at it fondly before placing it face down. Ethan felt the pain of that gesture like a knife. The reflection whispered, "You always forget her first." At night, the mirror brightened again. Lydia's voice echoed softly from the other side, muffled, distorted as if played backward. Ethan pressed his ear to the glass. "I see you," she whispered. Her tone wasn't frightened. It was curious, almost gentle. "You're on the wrong side, Ethan." His reflection was asleep on the bed, chest rising and falling. The sight filled him with hatred and longing. "Help me," he begged, though his mouth made no sound. Lydia's voice grew quieter, fading like a radio signal. "He's closer to me now," she said, "but I still dream of you." The light in the reflected room flickered once. His reflection's eyes opened, staring directly at him. "She dreams of me," it murmured. He stopped sleeping. Every blink felt dangerous, like surrender. The reflection had begun mimicking new gestures, brushing its teeth, humming softly, even pausing to listen to sounds Ethan couldn't hear. The line between them was vanishing. One night, the reflection set down its glass of water and turned toward the mirror, whispering, "I remember everything now." Ethan shook his head violently. "You're not me," he mouthed. The reflection smiled faintly. That's what he said too. Then it reached for Lydia's picture again and, this time, tore it in half. Ethan screamed voicelessly. The mirror rippled with every soundless cry until a single word appeared, scratched from the inside out. "Stay." Ethan woke to a different reflection, one where he wasn't there at all. The other side was empty. The bed untouched, the air still. For a moment, relief bloomed in his chest. Then came the sound. Footsteps behind him, inside his own dark space. He turned, but there was only shadow. A whisper slid across the room, cold and dry. "She doesn't need either of us anymore." The mirror flashed once, blinding him, and when he opened his eyes, Lydia stood where the reflection used to be, her face calm, eyes hollow. "You can rest now," she said softly. Ethan reached out. The glass rippled, then solidified. On the other side, only Lydia remained, smiling faintly as she turned off the light. It was a week before anyone noticed Ethan was gone. His phone rang unanswered, emails piled up, and the neighbors assumed he left town. When the landlord finally entered the house, everything was untouched. The bed made, coffee cold on the table, shoes neatly lined by the door. But something felt wrong. The air was too still, heavy with the faint scent of dust and old metal. The landlord stood in the doorway of the bedroom, frowning at the mirror. It was spotless, too clean for a man who hadn't lived tidy. He took a cautious step forward, wiping his hand across the glass. His reflection lagged a moment, smiling a little too late. Then came a single, soft knock from behind the mirror. The police arrived by noon. Officer Mara Dyer took one look at the bedroom and felt her stomach twist. She'd seen plenty of missing persons homes, chaos, panic, signs of flight. But this room felt staged, sterile, almost posed. She touched the closet wall and noticed faint seams beneath the paint, uneven in a perfect pattern. "Someone sealed this recently," she muttered. Her partner laughed it off, but she pressed harder, feeling hollow space behind. A breeze slipped through the cracks, icy and damp. Then she noticed the mirror's reflection didn't match the room exactly. In it, the closet door was slightly open. She blinked. In real life, it was shut tight. They broke the closet open that afternoon. The wood split easily, too easily, revealing a hollow frame. Behind it, only plaster and dust. No hidden room, no passage. Mara knelt, running her flashlight along the edges. The seams were smooth, as if something had been filled in from the inside. "There's nothing here," Tom said. But Mara's beam caught something. A small handprint pressed faintly into the wall. Smaller than Ethan's, too delicate. It wasn't dusted on. It was embedded beneath the paint, as though the wall had once been soft. Mara leaned closer, breath trembling. Her reflection in the mirror behind her tilted its head in the opposite direction and smiled. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. The sound of the knock stayed with her, the soft rhythm echoing inside her skull. She returned to the house alone, her flashlight beam cutting through the dark hall. The mirror waited, glinting in the moonlight. She stepped closer. The reflection was perfect, down to the dust mote suspended midair, except one detail. Ethan stood behind her in the reflection, pale and wide-eyed, whispering something she couldn't hear. Mara turned fast. Nothing. Only her own shadow. She faced the mirror again, heart pounding. Ethan was closer now. His lips formed a single word. "Help." What? By morning, the house was empty again. Mara's cruiser sat idling outside, driver's door open, radio hissing softly. Inside, no signs of struggle, only her flashlight rolling in slow circles on the floor. The mirror, once spotless, now shimmered faintly with condensation. Behind the glass, two figures stood hand in hand, Ethan and Mara, pale and still, their faces calm, their eyes open but unblinking. On the wall above the mirror, someone had written in trembling black ink, "The room remembers who enters it." As the sun rose, the reflection faded from view. Only the faint sound of tapping remained, steady and slow, like a heartbeat under glass. The house sat empty for months before anyone dared rent it again. The agency cleaned it, repainted the walls, replaced the locks, but the mirror stayed. They couldn't remove it. Each attempt ended with cracks in the tools or splintered glass that healed itself overnight. When Daniel and Claire Morgan moved in, they loved its quiet charm, its sunlight, the smell of cedar still lingering in the floorboards. Daniel joked about the stories online, calling them small-town ghost nonsense. But the first night, as they unpacked boxes, he caught his reflection blinking just a little too slow. He laughed it off. Claire didn't. The reflection of her husband had smiled before he did. By the third night, Claire couldn't sleep. The sound of tapping came from inside the walls, sometimes near the floor, sometimes behind the closet. Daniel said it was pipes, but she knew the difference between plumbing and knuckles. One morning, while folding clothes, she noticed something behind the mirror, a faint shimmer, like movement beneath water. She leaned closer and saw the shapes of two people holding hands, faces half-faded, eyes open but unseeing. When she stepped back, they vanished. She called Daniel to look, but by the time he came, the glass showed only them. Except her reflection didn't move. It stood still, eyes wide, mouth forming a word she didn't say. The days grew quieter. Daniel stopped joking. He began spending hours staring into the mirror, whispering things Claire couldn't hear. One evening, she caught his reflection still talking long after Head turned away. That night, she dreamt of the mirror, glowing red, the walls breathing like lungs. She woke to find Daniel standing beside it, hand pressed flat against the surface, whispering a name she didn't recognize. Lydia. His eyes were unfocused, face slack, lips smiling faintly. When she called his name, his reflection turned first. It smiled wider. "She wants to come back," Daniel murmured, voice distant, almost tender. She said, "I can help her." Claire tried to leave the next morning. She packed a bag, grabbed the car keys, and headed for the door, but the hallway felt longer than before. Every few steps she saw the mirror reflected in picture frames, in glass, in her own phone screen. Each version showed her walking away while her reflection stayed still. When she reached the front door, she froze. Her reflection waited there, smiling softly from the window pane, whispering something she could feel but not hear. Then, behind her reflection, another figure appeared. Daniel, eyes dark, face calm. "Where are you going?" he asked gently. She turned around. He was standing right there, smiling the same smile. Weeks later, the realtor opened the door again. Another couple had called about a showing. The rooms smelled faintly of new paint and lavender, though no one had touched the place. Everything was spotless. The mirror gleamed by the far wall, catching the realtor's eye as she passed. Inside its surface, the room looked exactly the same, except for one detail. A man slept peacefully in the bed, the corners of his mouth turned upward in a faint smile. His name was Ethan Ward. The reflection of a woman with auburn hair stood beside him, watching over him tenderly. The realtor blinked, and the vision vanished. The mirror was empty again, but just as she turned away, a single knock echoed softly from behind the glass.